Ahead on 13 News tonight, Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko says the Korean jetliner shot down last week was on a spy mission for the U.S. And in Brattleboro, Vermont, authorities have uncovered a ring of teenage prostitutes. We have an exclusive report.
Also ahead, the state orders biotech paper mills to close up shop and a special class that teaches people how to prevent choking accidents.
It's all next on 13 News tonight.
Now, Nancy Cozean, Craig Alexander, weather with Herb Stevens, and sports with Bob McNamara. This is 13 News Tonight.
Good evening. Craig has the night off. The town of Brattleboro, Vermont was shocked today by the news of a child prostitution ring in their town. The youngsters involved, all between the ages of 8 and 13, apparently organized the ring themselves. Bill Lambdin reports police hope to arrest 2 adults who may have become customers.
As classes let out this afternoon at the Walnut Street School, word hadn't yet spread, at least among most of the students. The worst fears of Brattleboro authorities had been confirmed. 10 children in this age group, as young as 8, none older than 13, mostly girls, had been trading sex for money with adults. The children will not be charged.
These children are victims. They're not perpetrators. They've been victimized by adults.
But Lieutenant Guthrie says there is nothing unique here. The same sad thing could happen any place, any time.
I think this problem is probably repeated nationwide in a lot of communities, but it hasn't come out. And sometimes maybe it has come out and there was nothing done about it. And what we're trying to do is make the public aware of what's going on in their community, and possibly through this awareness to have some education for the parents and the children. Parents have got to really sit down and talk to the children and talk to the children about these type of activities.
Bill Lambdin, 13 News, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Police are giving very few details about this case in order to protect the identities of the children.
Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko says his country was justified in shooting down Korean Airlines Flight 007. Gromyko spoke at an international conference in Madrid. He said his country had to attack the plane because it violated sacred Soviet borders, as he put it. At the meeting with Secretary of State George Shultz, he hoped the Russians might come clean about the attack.
It is an unequivocal statement in favor of the security dimension with no weight whatever to the human values involved when you have a boat or a plane that is lost at sea or in the air. That expresses very well one of the differences between our societies.
Shultz will get a chance to meet privately with Gromyko tomorrow. There was also local reaction to the Soviet attack. Today, Senator Al D'Amato called it a cold-blooded murder. D'Amato says he's disappointed some of our allies haven't come out in favor of the sanctions. He's calling for a halt to extending credit to the Soviet Union. With him was Dr. Michael Cole. His wife was on board the Korean jetliner. He says the Western world should freeze out the Russians.
Russia's been getting away with so much for so long, and each time they get away with a bigger and bigger incident. And there's very little we seem to do, or any country seems to do, to punish them. They are a maverick, they're barbarians, and just like any disease, you isolate the disease. I think Russia and its satellite countries should be isolated from all normal society.
Dr. Cole also favors D'Amato's idea of putting a stop to Soviet credit.
Vic, in other news, 2 local companies have joined forces to produce a new product they predict will make breathing for Americans a lot easier. There are at least 22 million Americans who suffer from asthma and hay fever. The millions of others who suffer from air problems, from pollution and smoke pushes that number even higher. Today, One Energy of Albany, in conjunction with Environment One of Schenectady, is now test marketing a new room air purifier in this area. A purifier One Energy claims that will be up to 90% efficient in removing particles the size of pinheads.
You have major cities with pollution problems, and more people in Northeast and North America tighten their homes for energy efficiency, energy conservation, and by doing that, they're causing more inborn air pollutants, which this will help.
The air purifier, which is non-ozone producing, could be nationally marketed by the end of the year. But One Energy has also introduced today a new solar system called Thermosiphon, designed for hot water heating needs in the Northeast. The system is a simple passive solar unit which requires only 2 water lines, one for cold water, the other for outgoing hot water. It also has a freeze-protecting device. Most of all, it's designed for middle-income families.
It will be sold installed around $1,800. You know, and with the tax rate in New York State, which is 55%, you're talking about around $750 range.
Used with other energy-saving devices, Cozean says 1 unit could provide enough hot water for a home up to 8 months of the year. Cozean also says a local food chain will be installing the Thermosiphon next month. Starting tomorrow, New York telephone customers will see a slight increase in their phone bills. The state's Public Service Commission today granted the unit more than a $54 million annual rate hike. The increase, which works out to just about 1% annually, will result in a monthly increase of about $1 for typical customers.
After a day of fighting, Beirut is calm tonight. French and American fighter planes crossed the skies over the city, putting a stop to fighting among Christian and Druze forces. Earlier, American Marines drew fire. 1 Marine was wounded. 3 French soldiers were killed from a mortar explosion. U.S. troops remain on the highest alert. No one expects the fighting between rival factions in Beirut to end anytime soon. Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger is on a tour of Central America. Today he visited El Salvador, where there's been also heavy fighting between government and rebel forces. Weinberger's visit looked like a scene from Vietnam. Later he met American Navy men on board the USS New Jersey. Tonight, Weinberger is in Honduras.
Senator Henry Scoop Jackson was buried today in his hometown of Everett, Washington. Funeral services were held in a neighborhood church. Vice President Bush and nearly half the members of the U.S. Senate attended. Jackson served in the House and Senate for 42 years. He was 71.
13 News Tonight is brought to you in part by Blue Cross of Northeastern New York. Your Blue Cross card is America's #1 Get Well card.
Biotech paper mills, labeled by officials as the biggest environmental scofflaw in the state, may soon be shut down. The State Court of Appeals today refused to hear an appeal of a lower court ruling ordering the plant to shut down. But as Chris Kapostasy tells us in this exclusive report, today's decision doesn't mean the mill will close.
State officials and biotech paper mills have been at environmental odds for most of the 10 years this plant has been operating on the Batten Kill outside of Greenwich. And for the past 14 months, area residents organized, convinced that the mill's discharge was ruining the river. Department of Environmental Conservation scientists supported that belief in court with evidence. And now the state's highest court has backed up an order that the mill stop discharging waste. But 13 News has learned that owner Marvin Ferris won't exactly close down. He'll stop operating his paper machine, but continue working another line, bringing in paper products from the outside. In the meantime, Ferris will continue to battle ENCON for a permit. He's claimed all along that he's been unfairly treated and that he should be allowed to operate.
I think that we've been used because our competitors, all of them in the tissue business, put more things in the river than we do.
While Ferris continues his fight, 25 of his 50 employees will be laid off when the official court order comes through in a few weeks. Residents who tried to close down the plant hope plans for another mill in Greenwich will provide jobs for those 25 workers. Chris Kapostasy, 13 News.
And the state officials say they plan to keep a close eye on biotech to make sure the court order is followed.
General Electric is closing some buildings at its Schenectady plant. Over the next 2 years, a total of 9 buildings at the main plant will be closed up. The company is moving the work done in those buildings to its Rotterdam plant. No GE workers will lose their jobs, since the 40 workers affected by the shutdown will also be moved to the Rotterdam operation. Albany has found a buyer for the scrap metal that doesn't go into the Answers plant. Friedman and Son of Green Island will buy the 20 tons of metal Albany produces a day. The city is expected to save about $50,000 in landfill costs. The move will also allow the state to finish paying off its debt on the Answers plant. Vic?
Today, Governor Cuomo issued a warning to voters. Approve the bond issue this November, or New York may miss out on billions of dollars of aid from the federal government. The money will go to repair our roads and bridges. A special congressional hearing was held in Albany today. Infrastructure, a big word for a big problem. The state tells us our roads are crumbling, our bridges rotting. It's going to take big money to fix. One estimate, as much as $50 billion in the next 5 years. Now, the state can't afford that, but the governor is hoping the voters will approve the $1 billion bond issue on the ballot in member. He says it's a matter of common sense and public safety.
Anyone in this state who owns a car or rides a train or a bus knows the dimensions of the job the state faces. They know that if there is work that can wait, it is not this work.
The bond issue is important to Cuomo. If it's passed, he'll be able to get another $2 billion from the federal government. It also means 35,000 new jobs. This rotting bridge on Route 9W is a good example of the problem. But the trouble is every community has got one like it. So who's going to get the money and who's going to get left out? The answers may tell us whether the bond issue gets passed. Cuomo must fight two old rivalries, upstate versus down, and city versus suburban versus country.
You do what we do every year. You make a budget, you compromise, you deal. Nassau-Suffolk's not going to get 25%. New York City is not going to get 43 to 50%.
As a result, Cuomo says everybody is going to get less than he wants. Next week, the State Transportation Department is coming out with a list of which roads and bridges will be repaired.
And just ahead on 13 News tonight, Herb's cool forecast.
Plus, learning how to prevent choking accidents. Stay with us. In Troy, Samaritan Hospital is starting a program for area restaurants designed to cope with one of the most common and preventable causes of death, choking on food. Julie Fusella reports.
Today's lesson was given to employees of Old Daly's Inn in North Troy.
1, 2, 3, 4.
These eager students were shown how to cope with adults and children who get food lodged in their throats. A certified instructor took them through the steps of the Heimlich maneuver, which uses pressure just under the rib cage to force food out of the throat. They were also shown what to do until the paramedics arrive.
A lot of people die because there's just not enough help. They come too late. So if we can just have the employees maintain a patient till we get here, then we can save their lives.
And one waiter thought today's lesson was time well spent.
Whereas before we just knew from the charts, this has been very helpful to us, because now when someone does choke on a piece of meat, we can clear it. We can clear it and get them, medical attention.
About 3,000 people a year choke to death in the United States. Hopefully what these people are learning here might help save some of those lives. Julie Fusella, 13 News, Troy.
You know, that technique is very necessary. At least it's come in handy for us at least one time.
Really?
Yeah. Personally, I had a friend who was choking, and it came in handy. Look at those instructions, folks, because you need them.
Good thing. That's right. Valuable information.
Absolutely. And more valuable information tonight, the weather, and it's cool outside.
It's nice outside. I've got some good news for everyone who likes low humidity and comfortable temperatures. Next couple of days are going to be beautiful. Right now,
clear skies. It is clear as a bell. Oops, I just gave away the thing on my local map. But anyway, it's really nice outside. 62 degrees. We haven't been that low in about 3 or 4 days. Relative humidity, 81%. But that's a misleading statistic, relative humidity. The barometer holding steady at 30.02, and the winds have died down. They're now from the west at about 8 miles per hour. There it is, clear as a bell. I gave it away, but temperatures are very comfortable throughout the Empire State and also New England, where it was hot today. Records in Providence, Rhode Island. There was a record in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Atlantic City, and records all the way down the coast to Apalachicola in Florida. The relief didn't come to New England quite in time to prevent another record high temperature. Our high earlier today was 83 degrees. The low is the current temperature of 62. We may be able to peel 1 or 2 more degrees off that before the night is over. Normal, 76 and 53. And yes, we escaped rain with the frontal passage. It rather mysteriously came through dry as a bone. Satellite picture shows the story graphically. Clear skies over the northeast all the way back to the Great Lakes. There are thunderstorms in Mississippi and Alabama. Pretty good cluster in Florida. And here's what's left of the frontal system. Just a few wispy clouds. It's not nearly as active tonight as it was last night when there were severe thunderstorms throughout much of Ohio and also western New York. There was hail reported as far east as Syracuse and power outages as well. But mysteriously, as I mentioned, the thunderstorms died before they got to us. Right now, high pressure over Chicago. Relief has come to the northeast. Cool air circulating out of Canada, and the next couple of days are going to be delightful. Eventually, the high will move on to the east. The clockwise flow will bring a return flow from the southwest. Then things will start to warm up as we approach the weekend. Here are the details of the forecast for the next 2 or 3 days, and they are great if you have the next 2 days off. Great for sleeping tonight. Much cooler, clear skies, diminishing winds. They've already started to die down. 48 to 53 degrees by tomorrow morning. You may even need a blanket tomorrow.
bright sunshine, seasonable temperatures. I love this. Low humidity, 75 to 80. Another cool night tomorrow night, even a couple of degrees cooler with lighter winds and better radiational cooling. A better radiational cooling setup is what I'm trying to say. And then on Friday, another nice day coming up. Here's where the warm-up starts. On Friday, just a few degrees warmer, and it looks like the weekend could be warm and even a little bit on the humid side. Again, another summery weekend coming up, it would appear.
Sounds like a day to go golfing for you, Herb.
I'd love to. I'd love to go golfing tomorrow. Good idea. I'll think about it.
Okay, make it early anyway.
All right. No complaints from anyone on that forecast. And coming up in sports, Max got the latest on the U.S. Open and those tight baseball races.
You betcha. And the reigning world drag racing champion has smashed up her car. Don't go away.
Max got news on a race driver tonight, right?
Yeah, not good news at all. An area race car driver, defending world champion Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney of Schenectady, the queen of the top fuel dragsters, I mean worldwide, was involved in an accident over the weekend in the national championships at Indianapolis. Shirley had the accident in this car. She was eliminated in the quarterfinals when she threw a wheel, then crashed into a restraining wall at better than 200 miles an hour. She walked away from it, but the car suffered $15,000 worth of damage. Gary Beck won the event and now is in a great spot to replace Shirley as world champion. But the one thing is certain, Shirley cannot repeat now as champion this year. The accident over the weekend wrecked any chances she might have had at all. But she told me today by telephone she will be back. That Hollywood film of her life story, by the way, starring Beau Bridges and Bonnie Bedelia, will open at theaters around our area soon, sometime in October. Talk about names in the area, forward Larry Spriggs, number 40 here, who played big for the Albany Patroons last season, is heading to the NBA again. He was signed tonight to an offer sheet by the LA Lakers, and he is one happy young man tonight. In tennis today, Jimmy Connors and Chris Everett Lloyd, both happy. They played their way into the semifinals of the U.S. Open. Connors in the near court had some trouble early on, but then went on to beat Elliot Telscher for the 11th straight time. Scores were 7-6, 6-2, 6-2. He owns that man. Connors showed every shot in the books today. Meantime, Mrs. Lloyd there had a pretty fair day herself. She's in the far court against Hannah Manlikova, and she won 6-4, 6-3. Manlikova played well today. It's just that Chris was much too much for her. In baseball tonight, Milwaukee trying to make it 3 in a row over the Yankees, but the Yankees have other ideas. In the 8th inning, they lead 8-5. Yankees hit them early. They got 3 in the 3rd here for Ray Frontenac. Randolph started things off with that RBI single to right to plate Larry Milbourne. Then, with 2 on, Mattingly cleared him with a double into the gap in left center. That finish started Chuck Porter, and the Yankees were on their way, although the Brewers right now are rallying back strong in the 8th inning. Elsewhere tonight, look at that. What are you going to do about Baltimore? Put them in jail. They lead Boston 5-2 with Mike Flanagan. They beat them, as a matter of fact. Final 5-2. 13 out of 15 now for the O's. They just don't lose that much. But look at this. Detroit, this could wreck them tonight. Cleveland beat them 7-1 in the first game. They lead them again 3-1 in the 8th inning in the second. Sparky, he must be sick. California 9-6 over Toronto, so Toronto now falls 8 full games behind Baltimore. They're laying in a pool of blood. In the 6th inning, Oakland 7-2 over Chicago. In the 9th inning, Kansas City leading Seattle. The score there is 3-2. In the National League tonight, red-hot Montreal did it to the Cubs again. The score was 6-1, blew them away. Steve Rogers pitched a 5-hitter on his way to his 17th victory. The Expos won their 4th in a row. 1 homer in the game right here by Terry Francona, of all people. His first of the year, but he tattooed it 400-foot blast. Got it off loser Dickie Knowles. Elsewhere in the league, St. Louis knocked over Pittsburgh tonight 5-2, so Montreal takes over sole possession of first place. Philadelphia stays a half out, 6-1 over New York. Denny won number 14. Second inning, Cincinnati doing it to L.A. 2-0. No score, Atlanta SF in the first inning. Now, if you were watching TV 13 at 6 tonight, you heard the owner of the Albany A's, Ben Bernard, say he would like to hook up with either the Yankees or the Mets on a franchise here sometime in the future. Bernard, of course, still has a year to go on his deal with the Oakland A's. And the A's team here was a gigantic success this season, drawing over 5,500 on an average for 23 dates. So while Ben is thinking about a future AA affiliation with either of the New York clubs, a lot of people are hoping he'll consider a move to AAA ball. That would be the International League. Ben is a little hesitant about that right now.
You just can't pull a franchise right out of the sky. You know, it could take 2, 3, 4 years to pick up a franchise. I know Buffalo right now is trying to get a AAA franchise, but there isn't one available. And also there's a lot of pros and cons as far as the budget. I mean, it costs a lot of money to support a AAA team, and I think this year here proved well for the area, but I think next year is going to be the key to the success of the baseball in the Albany area.
At Saratoga tonight, 1-6 in the double, Portabin and C.D. Collins, and they brought back $135.80. Washington Redskins wide receiver Alvin Garrett said today he was not offended in any way when Howard Cosell referred to him as a little monkey in Monday night's TV game with Dallas. Garrett said, in fact, he was pleased that Cosell singled him out. Black action groups have been after Cosell since he made the remark. They consider it a racial slur. Incidentally, Howard Cosell was on an airplane tonight that almost had a crash, but they got out of it all right. They landed safely.
Lucky Howard. He's got a lot of stories to tell about that one, I'm sure.
Bad week for him.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Ahead on 13 News tonight, a look at another side of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. Stay with us. Tonight marks the start of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. While the holiday is marked by special prayers, it's also celebrated with special foods. Benita Zahn bids us in.
Bailey Bloom is carrying on the tradition. She's cooking up a special meal to help celebrate the start of the Jewish New Year. When you walk into her home, your nose is tickled by the warm, rich mixture of aromas. And in a sense, you're propelled back in time, as many of Bailey's recipes are the same ones used by her mother and grandmother.
I remember a lot of fussing going on in my kitchen growing up when my mother and grandmother were there, and we were very lucky to have my grandmother because she was from the old school and the old country, and she knew all the old recipes, and of course we all learned from her.
For the most part, the foods the Blooms and other Jewish families eat during Rosh Hashanah are symbolic, like the apple dipped in honey she treated me to.
Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year. And so the whole idea is that you're wishing everyone a sweet new year. So that's why we have the honey, the apples and honey. We have honey cake. The brisket is prepared sweet and sour. So the sour we sort of forget about, but because you don't want everything really too cloyingly sweet.
Bailey has no explanation for the big pot of chicken soup simmering on her stove or the matzah balls that will eventually adorn each soup bowl, except to say that it just wouldn't be the holidays without these extras, the special touches. And there were other special touches. The meal is served in the dining room, the kitchen table ignored for this night, and the run-of-the-mill white or rye bread replaced by an egg bread, a challah. Benita Zahn, 13 News, Del Mar.
And next Friday is the beginning of Yom Kippur, also known as the Day of Atonement. It is the most solemn of Jewish holidays. Vic?
And that's our late report. I'm Vic Vetters.
I'm Nancy Cozean. The Tonight Show up next. Thanks for joining us.